Okay, hi everybody. Masechta Bava Kama, Daf Pei Daled Amud Aleph. We're in still relatively the beginning of Perek HaChoivel. We said Choivel specifically refers to a person who inflicts a mum or a bruise or a wound on his friend. And there's 5 special chiyuvim that we learned about. And the main theme we're still going to, at least the beginning of the shir, is discussing the fact that when the Torah writes ayin tachas ayin, shein tachas shein, it doesn't mean literally. It means rather you pay the monetary value of that. So just to go back over one thing, we saw it. We'll start from Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid Mishmei the Rabbi, which is about halfway down the page of Daf Pei Daled Amud Aleph. The line starts with the word Malchus. Halfway through the line, it says Rav Zvid. So that's Pei Daled Amud Aleph. It's like about 7 lines up from the medium wide lines. Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid Mishmei the Rabba Omar. Omar Kro Petza Tachas Petza. So in the parasha of this whole business of giving your mum to your friend, it says the phrase Petza Tachas Petza, and that's to teach me Litain Tsar B'mokum Nezek. It's a halacha that you have to pay Tsar B'mokum Nezek. It's a special dagesh over here, B'mokum Nezek, that even though you're paying for the damages that you caused, and you're evaluating him as an eved, how much was he worth before his hand was chopped off, how much after his hand was chopped off, you still, even though you're paying that amount, which might be quite a large amount, you still on top of that have to pay tsar. Tsar is the amount of pain that it caused for this chap. How you evaluate tsar is a sugya which we will also learn behemshech, but you pay tsar b'mokum nesek. You pay for the tsar that you caused. Now the Gemara says, "V'isal kadaitach mamash." If you think that when the Torah says an eye for an eye, it means literally, Ki heichi de lahai havaleit tzaira, lahai nami isleit tzaira. Why should you be paying for tsar if the perpetrator himself is having his eye taken out? Just like there was tsar caused to the victim. So if it means literally you do that to the perpetrator, why should he pay tsar? He's suffering the tsar. So why would you pay it? So that must mean that no, we don't do it literally. You rather pay for the nezek, and on top of the nezek, you pay for the tsar. Can't be literally, because if it was literally, why would you be paying for the tsar? The Gemara says on that, my kusha, what's your problem? What's the proof from here? This we started yesterday. There are some people that are very, very weak or spoiled or finicky, and they've got more tsar. They've got weaker bodies, they've got more tsar. There's a person who's very strong and well built. If you do the same thing, they have less amount of tsar involved. Meaning, let's say, for example, the victim we said yesterday was a very, very weak person. A weak person, an elderly person, a weak person. For him, the tsar of would be a tremendous amount, would be a lot. Whereas the person who did the actual crime, or was the perpetrator who gave the mum, who did the infliction, he was a strong person. So if you do the parallel injury that he caused to the weak person, to him, it will cause him much less tsar. So in such a case, the person who you did it to, the tsar was very high. Let's say it was worth $500 worth of tsar. But when you inflict that on the perpetrator, for him it costs $100. That amount of tsar was much less. So the difference he would have to pay. Let's say the difference of 4. Let's say so really an eye for an eye could be literal. And the Gemara is saying there's no right. It's really literal. And you do it to the perpetrator, you take out his eye. Only the amount of tsar that it cost him was $100. And for the person who he inflicted on was $500. So he'll have to pay the additional $200. He'll have his eye taken out. That'll be like the nezek. The additional $400. Sorry. He'll have his eye taken out for the nezek, and he'll pay the difference in what the tsar was. In other words, the Gemara thought in the beginning that there was a raya from here. Why are we? If it's literal, then why does he have to pay tsar on top? Must be it's not literal, and he pays for both. The Gemara answers no. It could be still literal, but the reason why he paid tsar on top, because sometimes the tsar isn't equal between the parties. The victim's tsar was higher, the perpetrator's tsar was less, and he'll pay the difference in the two tsars. So there's really no raya from here. That's that. Baruch, did you have a question in the beginning? It's clarified. That's good. Okay, that's what Rav Zvid said. Now Rav Papa comes along and says that was Rav Papa. Rav Zvid was Mishmei the Rabbo. This is Rav Papa Mishmei the Rava. He comes along and says a similar kind of limud, but slightly different. Rav Papa Mishmei the Rava Omar Kro V'Rapo Yirape. The Torah says when it refers to paying for refuah, paying for the medical fees, we said if someone chops their arm off, they're going to have to go to the doctor, and you're going to have to pay for the amount it costs for this, that, and the other, for the bandages, for the doctor, for the expert, whatever it is going to cost, that you have to pay. That's one of the 5 payments called ripui, and you have to pay for that. That's the standard explanation of a rapo yirape. But I suppose, why is it doubled up? Why does it say rapo yirape? So we learn it means litain refuah b'mokum nezek. Similar to what we said above, that just like tsar b'mokum nezek, this is refuah b'mokum nezek, even though you're paying for the actual devaluation, the depreciation of what this guy's worth, because you pay for that amount before he had the hand as an eved, and after he has the hand, you pay. Even though you pay for that, you also on top of that have to pay for the refuah. So this is similar to above. The isal gedaitich mamash, and if you think that it's literal, you chopped his hand off, you have your hand chopped off. Ki heichi daha boy asya, hainami boy asya. Just like the victim requires a doctor and doctor's fees and medical fees, so too, if it's literal, you're having the perpetrator is having his hand chopped off. He also has to pay for the doctor fees. So why should he have to pay for the doctor fees of the victim when if it's literal, he himself has to suffer his own doctor's fees? So therefore, that should cover, if he's getting punished literally, why is the Torah saying he has to pay for the refuah? He himself, why does he have to pay for the refuah of the victim? He himself has to suffer his own financial doctor fees. So why does he have to pay for it? So it must be that it's not literal. It must be that you're paying money, and you pay money for the nezek, and you pay money for the refuah. Same structure as above with sar, but just with ripui. Now the Gemara says exactly the same answer. My kusha, what's the kasha? What's your raya from over here? Dilma ikata salik bisra haya. Salik means it went up, it went away. Bisra is basar. Haya means quickly. It could, some people's skin heal very quickly. 1 second, and some people's skin heal very slowly. In other words, the same infliction on a person's, let's say, skin, that he needs to go to the doctor and he has to pay for cream for the next, this person's skin takes 6 weeks to heal. He's going to have to pay for cream for 6 weeks, whereas the perpetrator's skin maybe heals very quickly, and he has to pay for cream for 1 week. So just like we said, just like there's difference in tsar between 2 types of body, a well-built body's got less tsar, and a less built body, or an older person's got more tsar. So too for refuah is different. The same move, the same bruise or the same infliction will take longer or cost more to heal one person than heal the other person. And so too, what we're saying over here is maybe it's literal. We're disproving the raya. Maybe it's literal. And if you chopped off his arm, you get your arm chopped off. So why do you have to pay for the extra medical expenses if you yourself are suffering medical expenses? The answer is because your medical expenses being the choivel is less. Whereas his medical expenses in certain cases will be more, and you'll have to pay the difference for the medical expenses. But really, perhaps it's really literal. Fine, yeah, Baruch.
If you take the pasuk with the 2 words, if you translate with our understanding of what the extra word means, as opposed to saying, should surely.
Yeah.
How would you word
it? The answer is, I don't think you have to be able to word it. In other words, the fact that the Torah said twice the lashon of refuah says not only do you pay the basic refuah, you also pay in a case where you're paying for the nezek also. It's called a ribui or a yitur. A yitur means we have a superfluous word, like sometimes we make drashos from the word es, right? You saw a Bavel in Bava Kama that when Shor Mazik, we said that his not only the basar is also bahano, it's you're not allowed to be near from it. You're not allowed to benefit from the meat. You're not allowed to benefit from the hides also. And I think one opinion said we learn it from the word es. The rabbi says abasar, the rabbi says or, and doesn't fit in the word es. It's the answer is that there's an extra word. Sometimes an extra word teaches me a drasha, even if you cannot fit it in the actual word. Does that answer your question? No.
Literally take the pasuk.
Yeah.
And now take.
But there is an extra word. You read the pasuk like you said. You should surely pay for the refuah of this person. But there's something extra here.
Right. So what is it?
The extra thing tells me there's not only the basic chiyuv of ripui, there's also a chiyuv even when you pay nezek. Even when you're paying for the nezek. Yeah.
So the sentence would be a much longer sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when there's nezek, meaning that the nezek is not
Don't say the nezik covers everything. Basically, that's the point. Good. Rav Ashi Omar, another drasha. Rav Ashi Omar Asya tachas mishor. We're going to use a Gezeir Shava. We spoke about Gezeir Shava before. When you have two code words in the Torah in two separate places, we learn certain dinim from one parasha A to parasha B. So the word we're using now is tachas. Tachas mishor. Ksiv hocha ayin tachas ayin. We know it says an eye under an eye, literally under in the place of an eye. The question is, what does that tachas mean? It means money or it means literally. Uksiv hosam, it says in the other parsha, shalem yeshalem shor tachas ashor. You should surely pay a shor in the place of a shor. So we know when it comes to paying, damaging a shor, you for sure pay. That says clearly, shalem yeshalem, you pay money. And it says the word tachas over there. So we learn tachas to over us, ayin tachas ayin. Tachas to teach me that that's also a mandatory payment. It's mammon. It's not literal. It's mammon. Ma'ala halon mammon. Just like over there in the parish of shor tachas ashor, it's mammon. Afkan mammon. So to over here, ayin tachas ayin means mandatory payment. Says the Gemara, my chazis. Why are you saying? Why are you choosing the yalfas tachas mishor? Why are you learning tachas mishor? Neilif tachas mi odom. The klal with the Gezeir Shava is, even though Gezeir Shava was actually given by Har Sinai, and Hashem said the word tachas is given for a Gezeir Shava, but we're not always sure which word tachas. So the Gemara is asking, how do you know to learn the tachas ayin from the parsha of shor tachas shor, and therefore it is mammon? Neilif tachas me odom. Maybe you should learn it from the word tachas, which it says by odom dichsiv, v'nosata nefesh tachas nefesh. You should give a soul in the place of a soul, and that's referring to literally when there's a fight between two people, when they bash into somebody and they kill the person. Basically, it's referring to a parasha of killing, to murder, and it says that you give a life in the place of a life, and that is literal. We know that a murderer is chayav misa, so therefore, why don't we learn the ayin tachas ayin? It should be literal from the parasha of nefesh tachas nefesh of a murderer. Ma'ala halon mamash, just like over there is mamash. Afkan mamash. So the Gemara is asking, why are you learning it from tachas of shor, where it's money? Learn it from tachas of roitzeach, where it is literal. Says the Gemara, no. Amri, done in nezikin min nezikin, but ain't done in nezikin min misa. What do you do in such a case? We've had Gemaras like this before. The question is, you have to learn to the person who is more similar to. We've got a question, should you learn shor tachas ashor? Should you, ayin tachas ayin? That's our student that we want to know, where do we compare it to? Do we compare it to shor tachas shor, and therefore it's money, or do we compare it to nefesh tachas nefesh, therefore it's literal by a murderer? The question is, who is he more comparable to? So the Gemara is saying we should much rather compare it to shor, because shor is a parasha of nezikin. You damage the shor, you pay. So too, we should learn ayin tachas ayin was also nezikin. In other words, you didn't kill somebody, you just damaged their eye. That's nezikin. So it's much more comparable to shor tachas shor. You should learn it from there, that it's mammon. That's what the Gemara says. Are we done in nezikin min nezikin? We should learn nezikin from nezikin. But ain't done in nezikin min misa. The parsha of nefesh tachas nefesh was a parsha of misa. That's not so comparable. So we shouldn't learn from there. Then the Gemara says adarabba. Adarabba means exactly the opposite. Done in adam mi adam. There's a more of a comparison from ayin tachas ayin to nefesh tachas nefesh, because they're both referring to people. Even though one's nezikin and one's misa, but they're both people. And therefore, ayin tachas ayin is referring to giving a mum in a person. Nefesh tachas nefesh is referring to killing a person. But that's the common denominator between them. We're talking about a person. So therefore, we should learn that it's literal. Just like nefesh tachas nefesh was literally a nefesh, so to ayin tachas ayin is literally an eye. Ve'ein dan adam mibehema. So that's what the Gemara wants to suggest. Says the Gemara, you're right. It's not clear which one we should learn to. So we can learn from a third place. Ela Amar Rav Ashi. Mitachas asher ina yolif. We're going to learn it from a parsha of, if I'm not mistaken, Moitzi Shemra. That's a parsha of where a person got married and he thought that he was marrying a basula. He thought he was marrying a virgin. And in the end, he came and he made tainas and he made complaints that she wasn't really a virgin. And in the end, it was clear that he was lying, that she was. The Torah says in such a case, person that's called Moitzi Shemra, he put out a bad name on the girl. The Torah says in such a case, he has to pay money. And he gets malchus as a special exception, and he gets two punishments. In any event, he has to pay money over there, and it says over there, mitachas asher ino, he has to pay for the fact that he caused her infliction. Tachas asher ino, in place of the fact he called her initiation, affliction. Yolifle Odom me Odom v'nezikim v'nezikim. That's the best place to learn from. Why? Because on the one hand, it's Odom me Odom. It's referring to damaging a person, not damaging a shore. It's referring to damaging a person like the girl. And on the other hand, it's not Misa, it's Nezikim. It's actually causing damages. He didn't kill her. He caused their damages by putting out the bad name on her. So therefore, that's a good place to learn from. And we learn Ayin Tachas from there to the parasha of Motzi Shemra, where it says Metachas Asher Ino. And we say, just like over there is Mammon. And that's a good place because it's very comparable to our case. It's also Adam from Adam, and it's also Nezikin from Nezikin. And we learn from there that you pay back money. That's the end of that drasha. Now we've got another one, and then I think this is the last one. If there wasn't enough, there's one more to prove that it's not literal. Ayin Tachas Ayin. Basically, the moral of the story of this Gemara is if anybody asks you on the street when the Torah says is Ayin Tachas Ayin literal or not, you know from about 6 or 7 places, a whole daf over here in the Gemara, that it's not literal and it means money. But one more. Tanya Rebbe Lezer Oima Ayin Tachas Ayin. In fact, this is not necessarily one more. This is a new thing. Tanya Rebbe Lezer Oima Ayin Tachas Ayin Mamish. He comes along and says in a brisa, Ayin Tachas Ayin Mamish. Shocking, right? You could almost fall off your chair. The Gemara says, Mamish Sal Gadaitach. Could you really think it means Mamish? Rebbe Eliezer Leis Leikachol Hani Tanoi. Does Rebbe Eliezer not hold of all of these Tanoim that were just listed and all of these huge Rabbonim that said that you have to pay? So why is he saying Mamish? Says the Gemara, Omar Rabba. This is a Tanya. Right. He could potentially argue, but the Gemara is really thinking it's overwhelming, unbelievable. He really argues on all of these things. Says Rabba, no, he didn't mean that. Loima she'ein shamin oisoi ke'eved. He meant to say you don't evaluate him as an eved. That's also not so understood what he means. You don't evaluate him as an eved. Says the Gemara, Amalei Abaye, Elam Kaman Keben Choirin. You don't evaluate him as an eved. You evaluate him as a free man. Ben Choirin mi islay dame. Has a Ben Chorin got value? A true Ben Chorin's got no value. It's the value of a life. It's invaluable. How do you say it? You cannot estimate how much it is. It hasn't got a value. It's infinitely valuable, a Ben Chorin. So how do you evaluate it? So what does it mean? You don't do it like an Eved. Ela Omer Ravashi, Loi ma she'ein shamin oisei b'nisuk, ela b'mazik. He's got a new shita over here that you don't do the evaluation according to the nizik, according to the person who was damaged. We thought till now, and this is how I think we pass in the halacha, that you take the value of the person who you took the eye out. How much would he been worth in the slave market with his eye and without his eye? That's how much you pay. Rabbi Eliezer comes and says you do a similar thing, but you don't look at it as the victim. You look at it as the perpetrator. The perpetrator, how much is he sold on the marketplace with two arms or two eyes? Or 2 eyes, and how much would he be worth if he didn't have his eye? That's what it means. 1 second, you don't shamin with the nizik, you shamin with the mazik. The perpetrator, he's the one that did the crime, and you look at how much he would be worth with his eye or without his eye. That's what you do. And how does that fit? Just 1 second in the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer in the Bryce said, Ayin Tachas Ayin Mamish. So Rashi explains it means Mamish, his eye. Mamish, the eye of the perpetrator, as if not that you take it out literally, but it means his eye, not the eye of the nizik, the eye of the mazik. How much would he be worth if he lost his eye? That's what Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is, and that's an interesting opinion. He's a shitas yochid, I think, over here. We don't go with him lahalacha. We go with the mainstream opinion, which is that you evaluate it with the value of the victim's eye, not the value of the perpetrator's eye. But that's what Rabbi Eliezer said. Any questions still here? Good. Okay, so now we're going to go to a story. Hahu Chamra. Tekata Yada Dianuka.
Sorry, but
Question.
at the other side, that's almost the same. But what's the difference between the eye of the victim and the eye of the perpetrator? Because in both situations, it could come a case. The one is worth more than the other. So it balances out. So you chose this.
And it makes a difference because, like you just said, sometimes it's different. Sometimes there's a difference. You're right. Sometimes this will be lechumra. Sometimes this will be lechula. There's enough kamina. There is enough kamina.
There's no nafkamina.
If Reuven mazik's Shimon and Shimon's eyes were 100, and Reuven's eye is worth 200. As a machloikis, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanon, do you pay 100 or do you pay 200? That's not nafkamina.
If you're telling me that you go according to the higher one, then
no one says you go. No one says you're going according to the higher one. One opinion says you're going according to the victim's eye, whether it's higher or lower, and one says you go according to the perpetrator's eye, whether it's higher or lower.
So again, we're back to zero. It's the same thing. It evens out because
it might even out in different cases, but in this case, if Reuven comes to Beis Din with Shimon, and Reuven chopped off Shimon's arm or eye, and Reuven's eye is worth 100, and Shimon's eye is worth 200, that's the machlokes between Rabbanon and Rabbi Eliezer. In a different case, it'll be different. Okay, so then it'll
be less.
Fine.
So what did you gain?
You gain that you always evaluate it according to either the perpetrator's eye or the victim's eye.
No, we're trying to understand which one do we do.
That's the machlokes. Rabbanon holds. Yeah.
So why are we choosing the Chachamim?
Oh, why do we paskin like the Chachamim? We paskin like Chachamim because they're the Roiv. We paskin like the Roiv Shita. And you're right. In different cases, it will wind up differently. But the point is there's certainly a clear nafkamina in each B'din Torah that comes up.
But why are we looking at the Nizak as if everything spins off of him as opposed to spitting off the other on the other side, like what Eliezer wants?
I think that Rabbi Eliezer is a big chiddush, actually. Yeah. Rabbi Eliezer is a big chiddush.
But
we have to. When you pay damages, you should really pay according to the damaged party. If what you damaged. Rabbi Eliezer is quite an interesting opinion, and he does need some understanding why exactly it is that way. Maybe we can say that for another time. There is some understanding, but basically he's the chiddush over here. He's the chiddush over here. That's true. Yeah, you did have a machlokes about meitav, about when you evaluate karka. It's true, but over there it's not exactly true because over there you're paying the exact amount that you damaged. The financial amount you damaged is exactly the same. The question is, do you give according to the quality field of the nizik, and therefore you'll give, if it's a higher quality, you give a smaller amount, or do you give the quality field of the mazik, and if it was a lower quality, you give a higher amount, but the actual amount is the same. Here we have Rabbi Eliezer opinion that I think the amount will be different, which is interesting. Yeah. According to Rabbi Eliezer opinion, the amount would be different. If the eye of the person who did the crime was less, you'd be paying less. If it would be more, you'd be paying more. Sorry, Alan.
Rabbi Eliezer, if the perpetrator is a 20-year-old and the victim is a 75-year-old, how would he work that one?
So then,
they're both a 70-year-old Evid and a 20-year-old perpetrator. How would he work that one?
Right. So who's worth more? The 25 so then he would have to pay more.
The Evid's come to the end of his service.
Well, that's another question, how we do exactly evaluation of an Eved, but you take the 20-year-old, how much would it be sold with 2 eyes? And how much would it be sold without the eyes? And it will be less. You're right, it will be more than if you did it with the victim, and that's how he evaluates it. That's correct. Yeah. So I'm not sure of your name. Rav.
Rabbi Eliezer Shiur. When you have an interesting idea, it's also very, very lonely place. In other words, like it's an amazing. I mean, it's completely counterintuitive, and that's the reason why it's not the opposite.
Right.
It's completely
Right. But yeah, maybe if we've got time, we'll say maybe some understanding in that. Anyway, the Gemara says now, "Vaita hahu chamra takota yoda diyanuka." It's by 2 dots. We're about 7 lines up from the bottom with hahu chamra. There was a certain chamor, there was a certain donkey, the kota yoda dianuka, that bit off or chopped off the hand of a baby. So the donkey somehow got hold of the baby and he bit the arm of the baby. Papa bar Shmura came in front of the Din Torah, came in front of obviously the owner of the donkey was going to be liable in this case for biting off the arm of the child. They came before Rav Papa bar Shmuel. Oma luhu zilu shoimu le arba dvarim. Go and make a shuma for 4 things. The 4 things. Now, has anybody got a problem with so far what just happened? The rabbi said to him, go and make an evaluation of the 4 four things that we said. Number one, we're missing one. That's good. That's a good question. Oh, very good. Rav Peretz says exactly good question. That with here we're dealing with the Chamor did it. Chamor did the nezek over here, and not a person. We said that the five things, besides the problem there's 4 or 5, the 4 or 5 things are only done in case of when the person perpetrated the chavala, not an animal. So good. The Gemara is going to address both things. Let's see. Amalei Rava v'ha'anan chamisha tanan. First of all, the Gemara asks what Rav Ginsburg asks, which is there's 5. Our mission says you do 5 things. Why are you saying 4? Amalei lebar min nezek ka'amina. I meant 5, but I wasn't including nezek because nezek is always included. Otherwise, nezek is a standard thing that you pay for everything. So I was saying go and evaluate for the extra 4. Fine. Amalei Abaye v'ha'chamorhu. A chamor einem mishalem ela nezek. This is a chamor, and the chamor only pays nezek. Ad kedei kach, when I learned this Gemara, it bothered me very much. What was he thinking in the beginning? What was he thinking in the beginning when he says go and go and evaluate these things? Did he not know the story? So actually, if you look in Tosfos, Tosfos says over the small Tosfos zilu shoymu leidalat dvarim, the bottom one on the page. Hayasavar the adam hizikoi. He thought actually he didn't have the facts correctly. They didn't tell him the facts, so he didn't know the facts. He thought that actually it was an adam that did the damage, and that's why he said originally go and evaluate all the 4 or 5 things, because he thought that it was really a person that did the crime. But when they told him it was really chamor, so of course he knew that you only paid nezek. Fine.
The odd one out would be hope doesn't work, so can't claim compensation for work. So therefore, the nezek is included. The 4.
That's an interesting point. If there's boishes, that's an interesting point. I don't know about working. I don't know. Sometimes you can have a good 10, 11, 12-year-old boy that can schlep. It does say Yanuka. It says Yanuka. That's a good question. What would be the shevis? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
We're talking about Xavier, I would think the opposite. We're talking about the value on the slave market. So
okay, but Alan's asking besides for the value on the slave market, there's another payment called if you make someone unemployed and he can't work, you pay for that amount. That's called shevis. And it sounds like from the Gemara he should really be paying that. And Alan's correctly asking where is the shevis for a Yanuka? It's a good. He's asking about the shevis. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the answer. Boishes, it also could be a question. We'll have to see the Mishnahs later on where there's a boishes for a koton.
By this case, that he misunderstood. What are we learning?
I guess when you address a rabbi with your question, make sure to tell them clearly all the facts involved. That's one lesson we could maybe learn from over here. I don't know, but today we're learning it. Purim Koton. We can learn it over here and pay down in Baba Kama. Yeah, I don't know.
it's not a joke.
No, not a joke.
However, if the owner and stuff, then we can add it.
No, when it comes to a donkey damaging, even if there's pshia, first of all, you only pay really if there's a pshia, even nezek. If it was just ba'oinus, you don't pay at all. So when it comes to donkey damaging, it's only always nezek, even with pshia. If you can prove otherwise, I'll be happy to see. So then the Gemara says, "Amalu zilu shoymu le nizke." Go and make an evaluation of what the evaluation is. Amale zilu shoymu le nizke. We have to really evaluate him according to the value of an eved, even though it's only nezek. But the way you evaluate the nezek is by looking at him as on the slave market. Amalu zilu shaimu ka'avda. So you're right. Go and evaluate him like an eved. Amalu avu yanuka. The father of the baby came along and said, "Loi be'ina zila be'minsa." I don't want this money because I don't know. I don't want this money. I'm not interested in getting it. It's a busha for me maybe to collect it, and I'm not interested in collecting it. That's what he said. Omrulei, they said to the father, you're actually going to damage the child by this. The money's not actually legally yours. The money really belongs to the child. Just sometimes maybe the father can look after the money, and sometimes you have to put the money into a bond or into a fund for the child, but you have got no right to be moichel. Rashi speaks out, the father basically was coming to be moichel on the money. but the father's got no right to be moichel on this money. It's not money which by law is rightfully his. It's rightfully belongs to the child. So therefore, you cannot forgive it. You cannot do such a thing. When he's big, the child, I'll give him the money myself. In other words, I'm not going to collect the money from you, but I'm pledging myself. I'm obliging myself that when the child is a godel, I'll recompensate him with that exact amount of money that you owe. That's what the Gemara says. Yes, right. You're correct. You're correct, Yosef. I will in the Chonchon. I think the Zila Bei Milsa maybe is he doesn't want him to be assessed as a slave. Yosef corrected me. It's degrading to be maybe evaluated as a slave, and therefore the father didn't want that. But the father's got no right to do that because it's going to cause a financial loss to the child. But in the end he said that I will cover that loss myself, and that he was makabel himself that he would do. Right. Says the Gemara another story. This Gemara is quite an important Gemara for, as we'll see, a few principles we're going to learn from this Gemara. We'll make a start today. So the 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Hahu Tura. There was a certain Tura is a shore. The Olas Yade Dianuka. Similar kind of a story. Unfortunately, he was Olas. He bit off the arm of a baby. That's what happened. Also Lakame de Rava. The case came in front of Rava. Omalahu, Rava said, Zilu Shaimuhu Ka'avda. Rava said, go and evaluate this child as an evet, and then that will be what the nesek is. Omrulei v'ha'marhu da'oma kol nishon ke'evet ein goyven oisoi b'bav. You are the one who said, Rava, that anytime you need to make an evaluation like an evet, we do not collect that money in Bavel. In Bavel, they would not be able to collect the money. We're going to see very soon why not, because they were missing the Dayanim, we'll see soon, but they could not collect the money in Bavel for such an event. This is the details of this halacha we're going to see soon, but they're asking on him, why are you telling the father to go and evaluate the son and collect the money? You yourself, Rava, said you can't collect such money in Bavel. The reason why we need to know is that even though you cannot collect this money in Bavel, Beis Din cannot force the person, the chovel, to pay the money. However, if the damaged party manages to grab the money or grab some item of money that belongs to the perpetrator, he's allowed to keep it. This is a halacha we find out in a few cases that sometimes Beis Din have not got the koyach, let's say, to really inflict to carry out the din, to collect the money from the person who's liable to pay. But there is a halacha that if the person grabs the money, if it's toifis, that's called tfisa. If there's tfisa on the money, he's allowed to keep the money. So that's why Rava was saying, Rava wasn't saying that you're chayav to pay and I'll force you to pay. Rava was saying, make an evaluation of what it was. In the event that there'll be a tfisa on that amount of money, they'll be allowed to keep that amount of money. That's what Rava was saying to do the evaluation for, not to be mechayiv, to force payment, rather to be able to hold the payment that you grab. Fine. Now the Gemara says, Rava l'taimei. This is Rava, he's going according to his own opinion. It fits with what he said somewhere else. So Omar Rava. Rava said the following statement. Nizke shor b'shor, but nizke shor ba'adam, goyvin oisai b'bavel. If there's damages of a shor b'shor, meaning there was a shor and nizek, shor was damaged by another shor. Right? As we learned in Bavakama a lot of times, shor damages a shor, that's one case. And nizke shor ba'adam, if a shor is damaged by a person, the person comes along and breaks the leg of a shor, then the halacha is goyvin oisoi b'bavel. That we can collect in bavel. Basically, the common denominator is if the damaged party is a shor, whether he was damaged by an odom or whether he was damaged by a shor, you collect the money. When the damaged party is a shor, you collect the money. However, nizke odom ba'odom, the nizke odom b'shor. However, nizke odom, damages of a person by an odom ba'odom, or nizke odom, damages of a person by a shor, ein goyven oisai b'bavel. You cannot collect that money in bavel. Again, we're going to see right away what's so special about Bavel, but the klal is, Rava says, if a person is damaged, doesn't matter how, whether he's damaged by a person or whether he's damaged by an ox, you cannot collect that money in Bavel. Whereas if a shore is damaged, doesn't matter how the shore was damaged, whether he was damaged by a person or damaged by a shore, you do collect that money in Bavel. That's what he says. Now,
You mentioned Shiur, not
Chamor, shor, seh, it's all the same thing. In terms of this halacha of whether the animal does it, we learn. I think you learn in the fifth parak, shor mishabas. We say that, and whenever we say shor, we mean chamor, we mean seh, we mean any other animal. So basically, whether a person, so look on. So whether an animal, let's say more accurately than maybe, when an animal is damaged, you collect that money in Bavel. Whether the animal was a shor, a chamor, or a seh, doesn't matter. You collect the money. But if the person was damaged, you do not collect it in Bavel. Now, why not? Says the Gemara, Maishna nizke adam ba'adam, v'nizke adam b'shor deloi. Why is it that you do not collect this money if a person is damaged in Bavel? You know, it's lefi the din. Of course, you should be paying. So why do we not collect it in Bavel when a person's damaged? Says the Gemara, Elohim, or we can say even Elohim because it's referring to the Dayanim, be'inon v'leika. You need to have Elohim. You need to have Dayanim. Dayanim over here means Dayanim smuchim. This refers to, it's not what the smicha we have nowadays. There was a smicha back in the day when the first smicha was Moshe Rabbeinu to Yeshua, when he rested his hands upon him and he ordained him, is that the correct word? To be a Rav, to be able to judge certain cases, mandatory cases. And that smicha was passed down from Yeshua further on till a stage and time around, I think, Hillel, where it was cancelled and it was bottled and it didn't carry on such a tradition. And when the Torah refers to Dayanim, it says in the parsha, we'll see in a minute. It says in the parsha that in Parshas Mishpatim, it says the pasuk says, I don't have the pasuk quoted over here. Anybody's got the pasuk? It says I haven't got the pasuk to hand, but in the pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim, it says you need to have Elohim, which was referring to Dayanim Smuchim. And in Bavel, at this period of time, they did not have Dayanim Smuchim. They didn't have these kind of Dayanim, and therefore they cannot. I think Rashi actually says on Amud Beis. That's where it says. It says Ad Elohim Yavoy Devar Shneim. When there's a dispute between the two people, whether it's a shor b'shor, we'll see what kind of cases it is. It says Ad Elohim Yavoy Devar Shneim, and to the judges it should come. And the judges, when the Torah refers to judges, means smuchim. And however, there were not judges that were smuchim in Bavel. And therefore, that's why the Gemara is saying that nizke adam ba'adam and nizke adam b'shor, you cannot actually be mechayev that in Bavel. Because in Bavel, they're missing the Dayanim. In Eretz Yisrael, in certain kufas in time, they had these Dayanim smuchim. They could collect the money. But in Bavel, they could not. And therefore, you cannot collect nizke adam ba'adam and nizke adam b'shor. What's the difference between shor and shor? We'll stop here for today. But that's the beginning of this sugya, that certain mandatory collections require dayanim. But I just want to stress, you need these dayanim in order to be able to inflict, to actually be bachayev and to be koifet, to force the payment. Whether the person's actually chayev to pay or not, he's certainly chayev to pay. He needs to pay. Just we're lacking the courts are lacking the authority or the koyach to actually to enforce. That's the word we're looking for, to enforce the payment. But the chiyuv is there. Therefore, that's what we said before. If he managed to get the money through tfisa or something, he could maybe hold it back by him, but you cannot enforce the punishment. You cannot enforce the payment because you need dayanim smuchim, and that's the beginning of this sugya of the fact that bisman hazeh, we have to know how much we can collect, how much we can't. But do we have these dayanim? We don't have these dayanim, so we'll pick up from here. Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.
Encouraging bad behavior.